not live yet. Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, that's the one time I really didn't want to do a cold open and it wait too long to go live. Ugh. Okay, whatever. We're doing a cold open, I guess. I swear to God this wasn't manufactured. Oh. Welcome to the weekend spread, which is a weird way to title this because it's not actually the weekend spread. There's only one game, and we're talking a lot of other things. So, Untitled College Football Podcast on the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby, here with Ty and Boat Blake. We're here to talk about the college football playoff drama, transfer portal, getting out of control, and, of course, Ty, Army Navy. So, let's hit that intro music and get this thing going. What the hell? Dude, there's just someone screaming outside of my... There's just someone screaming outside of my window going, "Ah, oh, yeah, yeah." I'm a little horrified. That's, really weird. Welcome to the weekend spread. I swear to... This is the weirdest start ever.
The Shining spread edition.
I guess so. This is just wild. What the hell? Anyways, look, welcome to Weekend Spread. Bit of a weird one because we aren't picking games as mentioned, but look, congratulations are in order. Boat and Blake, once again, the champion of the Weekend Spread. He came through, got a little nervy there, Blake, but you came out with the big win. Courtesy of, I believe it was Troy and App State. Yeah, they held off Yosef. You just barely scrapped out a one-game victory over Jameson. So I'll let you have the floor. Congratulations. How you feeling?
Thank you. Feeling great. Like, it feels even better that Ball Not Knower Jameson had that slight bit of hope that he could have possibly won that one. But I told him on the pod that Troy is a well-disciplined team. They don't make dumb mistakes, and they just absolutely crushed App State. It wasn't even close at the end there, and the Golden Fedora is on its way. I ordered it. I was hoping it would come in before today, but for the Bowl podcast, the Golden Fedora will be here, the sign of a true champion. Oh, it feels good. It feels good, especially those close ones. I love when the race is close at the end. But yeah. And as you could see with for our YouTube audience, the beautiful graphics Bobby has made, Ball Not Knower Jameson cowardly decided not to join the podcast tonight. He doesn't want to show his face. This dude is scared. He can't take the heat. He can't take it that he went up to me mano-y-mano and lost. So I'm ready for him to come back on for bowls to roast him.
Understandably so. Ty, you did finish in last, though, so unfortunately you'll have to face Blake's musical wrath whenever he decides to play as your ringtone, or your morning alarm for a while. I narrowly avoided that. Shout out to Miami of Ohio, or else we both would have had to deal with it. What are your thoughts finishing last?
Yeah, once again, and the year that I won is when I presented this rule change. The postseason should be included. That's how everyone determines champions. That's the point of a postseason. So I may have to opt out of the bowl picks this year, since they do not matter in this Cracker Jack League. But yeah, it was my own doing. If you go back and listen to the tapes, I knew that something was up with Bama. I knew that I should have picked Bama. I gave a whole spiel about how I should pick Bama, and then I fell victim to the propaganda in the mainstream media telling me that Saban is gone. He's not gone. I think they might actually win the national championship this year, which would be hilarious. So it was my own doing, and I'm getting what I deserve for betting against Alabama in a postseason game. That's textbook foolishness. So I get what I deserve.
Well, that's fine. It's a long season. A lot of mistakes were made along the way. I understandably, it's a tough contest. You really weren't that far I think you were like right at 500. So it's really tough to try to win in this league. I understand you kind of were the Florida State of this, in a way, you want more. You're on the outside looking in, but anyways,
I will say it's, I may have gone about 500 on the year, but it just the thing that unites Blake and I is we went like 50-2 each of us on ball nowhere takes, and then we just happen to get unlucky on a lot of the toss-ups versus, like we said, noted ball nowhere Jameson not here to defend himself, of course, but you can't just not show up for your court date and get off free because you weren't at court. That's not how it works. So he must still face his punishments.
This is true. And we'll bring him on for the bowl picks coming very, very soon. Really excited about those. We're going to be picking those week by week because Lord knows if we tried to pick every single bowl all at once, we'd be here for 6 hours. It would be awful.
6 hours, and without the landscape is changing so much, I think like these teams could look materially different from choosing them like this week versus a week before the games. Like people are shooting all over the place, opting out, transfer portal, everything. Like these teams could be completely different by the time the end of January or like end of December rolls around.
Oh, absolutely. College football is absolutely nuts right now. And let's just dive right into it. Skip the rest of the preamble. College football playoff has been decided, as mentioned on, we talked about this a bit on the Schooner Pod this Sunday, but Bowden Blake was not there to discuss the controversy of leaving Florida State out of the playoff. And we really had to get your voice in on this. Blake, what are your thoughts on 13-0 conference champion Florida State getting left out for Alabama and Texas?
Yeah, I think it's a legitimately horrible, like, just the playoff field that they came up to, although it's going to create some entertaining games, it's just horrible methodology in which they arrived on it. Because, like, I do think there are two legitimate schools of thought when it comes to the college football playoff. There's one that comes with the most deserving, so you have the Power 5. If you win a Power 5 conference undefeated, that still means something regardless of maybe a team, other teams that are competing for the field has a stronger schedule, has better players, but might not have the same record for you. Those teams that are more deserving per se can get in, but then on the other hand, it's like the playoff committee just keeps on preaching like the best teams. We're trying to choose the 4 best teams, and I just feel like the field didn't do either well at all. You got to a result where Florida State, although they are materially different without Jordan Travis, they like. It makes no sense how you can go into the final week, Florida State's in the playoff, they have a bad game versus Louisville, with their third-string quarterback who will not be playing in the playoff if they were to make it. And you had, at 7 and 8, you had Bama and Texas. Bama, obviously impressive win. Texas, impressive win. But it's like Texas is beating up on a OSU team, which we've talked about on the weekend spread a lot. Probably not the best. Like, we knew going into that game they were probably going to get routed. There's a reason why OSU lost to South Alabama this year. There's a reason why kind of the end of their schedule came down to be so close. This Oklahoma State team was punching above its weight when it came to its record. And so I just don't understand. This just doesn't achieve anything, what they're saying. If you wanted to go 4 best teams, I don't think Bama's in it. I don't. Like, I think you would put a Georgia, I think you would put an Ohio State. I know they just played, but I'm like, this Bama team, it's like, for all the flaws that they listed about Florida State, you look at this Bama team, they lost to Texas at home, got killed by them, then went on the road to South Florida, almost lost to them, almost lost a nail-biter to Arkansas, and then had a miraculous touchdown to beat an Auburn team, which, although bowl eligible, lost the prior week to New Mexico State. It's ridiculous that it's like they nitpick Florida State for just having ugly games in the end, but then yet just ignored all the ugly games that Texas played in, that Alabama played in, that Washington even played in. I know Washington had some impressive wins, but going into that stretch, there was a reason why they're a 10-point dog. And so it's just really frustrating that I feel like this result it feels like they just were trying to fine tune the matchups. They weren't trying to choose the 4 best. They weren't trying to choose the 4 deserving. And we kind of got this hodgepodge where it's like, okay, we can't leave out the SEC. So the SEC's in. We can't put them above Texas because Texas obviously beat them. And then we're just like, well, we have to find a reason why Florida State's not in and come up with one, which did not happen the week before because they obviously had him at 3, even like struggling. So I'm all too familiar with this game getting put at the 3rd spot and then miraculously dropping out after a decent win the week later. So,
Well, and not only that, but if they're going with best, then why is Florida State ahead of Ohio State and Georgia?
yeah,
Like,
yes, yeah. Why are they at the 5 spot? Like, if you thought they were such trash that they had to get pulled out, then you have to put the better teams in front of them, and they just didn't even do that. They just pulled them down to the 5 spot for a little like TV dramatic showing when they could go beauty pageant order to like really get like the people going. Like,
it's a dog and pony show, is what it
yes,
is.
it is.
It's such a joke, and it's going to get better in the 12-team era. You're not going to have Florida State left out. They'll just be left out of a bye. And then worst case scenario, you're hosting Liberty, in a first round game. So like the stakes are going to go down and that's going to be way better.
It is. It worries me. It worries me for those, like, if you are not the SEC, if you are not the Big Ten right now, you should be a little worried that, although you're probably not going to get left out, like Bobby said, like, you're not going to get left out of the 12-team playoff, it does hurt your chances of getting into those at-large spots. Like,
you gotta win out.
Like, you have to win out. Like, or be one loss, maybe one loss to sneak in, but your margin for error is next to nothing whenever they're putting teams like Mizzou and Ole Miss and all these other kind of we just think average teams in those spots with multiple losses just because they're always going to evaluate the SEC better.
Right. And with all due respect to the Shield, Blake, that's kind of why OU made the move to the SEC.
I get it. Like, I get it now. Like, I 100% get it after seeing, like, the ACC is basically done. The, like, Big 12, it is the Big 12 champion is going to be in. You're probably not going to get 2 squads in, and you're just going to get stuck with, top and mid tier of the Big 10 and SEC. It sucks. The SEC had a down year too. That's what the SEC's best out of conference win was Louisville, which Kentucky beat. That was their only one. Their next one were going down to maybe like Auburn Cal. Like, they did not have
Missouri beating K-State.
Yeah, like, they don't have any like good signature wins, and that was on a last second at home.
Oklahoma State has a better win against Kansas State than the SEC does.
Yeah. It just makes the resume didn't stand up for the SEC this year. The quality of talent didn't. This would be the year to show that you're unbiased, that you're like, look, SEC had a down year. Like, it sucks, but they played themselves out of it, basically, by Bama winning it and Texas beating them. Like, I just don't get it. I don't get how you can go into conference championship week and those are the games that the playoff sees as, like, okay, these are kind of like the quarterfinal rounds, basically, that is going to knock off some competitors. Like, if you wanted to get in, you had to win your conference. But it just
ultimately,
but Texas played them. Like, they had one of those quarterfinal games at Alabama and they lost, and so it's just like
it's a mess. Ty, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, we kind of talked about it last pod. I did. Blake, I was crucified for the take that you just had about Texas already having beaten Bama. Jameson started screaming it was early in the season. Because I guess early in the season doesn't matter.
Jameson is very good at just screaming whenever there's a take we have. And he goes, and then we just kind of move on.
He screams a lot. Longtime listeners of the pod know he screams a lot on the pod. No, but you're right. I mean, I do like. I would have been more upset, I think, had Georgia gotten in. I do like this year, at least you had to win your conference championship. I mean, I feel like it was the 4 best conference champions. Certainly, but I don't know. You did touch on something that I did want to bring up, but when you talked about how if it's the ranking of the best, then why didn't Florida State drop down to like 7th, which would have been absolutely hilarious if on the reveal show Florida State just wasn't even mentioned because they
Didn't
only
even
cover the
show
top
up.
6. There was not even people are like, what in the you're
They dropped to
dead
10.
certain as soon as you see 5 and 6 announced, you're dead certain that Florida State made it in, and then it's Bama, and you're like, what in the world?
The
is
committee
going
just
on?
forgot.
That would have been hilarious.
They
if
just
they were out 7 or 8.
But they need to do, if they're going to do dramatic jumps, they have to be willing to do dramatic drops. If they really, I would at least admire them, because I'm like, at least you're standing by your conviction that, you think this team is really bad. You think in its current form, Jordan Travis mattered that much, that, they aren't beating anybody, remotely close to the top 6 or 7. I respect that more. Because at least you're saying, look, we are wrong. But the fact that they went into this final week and didn't, just like that Louisville game, which they won, that was the deciding factor. That it's now we can.
It should be a credit to them that they fought through losing Travis and their backup. They did that with they won the ACC championship with a 3rd-string quarterback. Their defense was absolutely dominant against a Jeff Brom offense that had been pretty damn good this season. There's a lot to be. And not only that, but they had the resume too. Yeah, you played in the ACC, but you beat Duke when they had Riley Leonard. You beat Clemson on the road. That's something. And then you had the non-conference.
LSU. Yes,
you clobbered a full-strength LSU. A 1-to-1 comparison with Alabama.
A 3-loss LSU.
But fresh from the jump. One of those losses.
They beat them.
Yeah.
They significantly dominated that game more than Bama did with LSU, and Bama had once again the benefit of being at home. It's there was so many things that you could compare that FSU and Bama slate, and they just refused. Always, they refuse to they overlook it. It's they give you this 2-hour show or whatever, but they only put on Boo Corrigan for 5 seconds to explain. I think it's the same reason why I get mad at officials. Officials should have press conferences for controversial calls, because at the end of the day you have to defend your decisions or say why you were wrong, and I just feel we never get that satisfaction of the committee being this is what happened, this is why we did this. They just kind of use vague, we think it's worse. But
did you hear you probably didn't, the description for why Ole Miss was over OU?
No,
because they said, well, Ole Miss in the season they had, and then just started talking about Missouri and Penn State, about how they had better losses. And I'm like, that's not an explanation for why you have Ole Miss over OU. Their best win was non-ranked Tulane.
Yeah, it's same thing that happened with SMU, and not me here defending SMU, but they were getting onto SMU for losing to P5 schools, but Liberty didn't play a P5 school the entire year. They played the weakest strength of schedule in all of FBS football. You couldn't get worse than Liberty, and so it's just
and they would have lost to New Mexico State too if their quarterback was healthy the whole time through.
And so
anyways.
It makes no sense. And just to harp on Jameson's point, because it was early on in the year, do you just want to watch 5 FCS games before conference play then? Because that's what happens. If you start devaluing, if you start devaluing these early season games, then we won't have good games in the beginning. We complain all the time about these, nobody likes scrub games. Nobody does. They suck. But, if we keep on devaluing those early season wins, then there's no point of playing them. And now we're just going to get, this diluted non-conference where college football doesn't start till about October 1. And, that's really going to suck. That's really going to suck.
Well, and go ahead, Ty, you got it.
I was going to say this specific committee selection is actually really hilarious for this point, because they just completely ignored and devalued Bama losing. And then also Texas's entire reputation is built on beating Bama. Think about what you would think about this Texas team if that Bama win was, against Rice, or they went in and played at Rice, replaced it with, I know Rice is not FCS. I'm not trying to make a Rice bit here, but imagine if they replace that with a scrub team. That's all that this Texas team has. They beat Oklahoma State, sure. Not, people are trying to hype that up to justify giving Texas hype. No one's seriously, and I'm not trying to be anti-Oklahoma State. I know they beat us this year, but no one seriously thought OSU was that respectable of a team. Like this Texas, they put
Yeah.
everything on that one game to support Texas, and then completely ignored it to support Bama. So it's an interesting dichotomy of both ways of looking at it, and with the exact same game in the exact same season.
I mean, that's the thing, is the only reason they can't, the only reason why Texas is there is because you can't leave out the SEC champion, apparently, and you can't have Alabama, over Texas. So yeah, you got to put Texas there too. That's just frankly it. And it's garbage. And, like, everyone wanted to get rid of the BCS. And I was fine with it because we got rid of the two team system. I'm fine with that. I think the 4-team system's bad. But what wasn't bad was the BCS formula, which took in to account the computers, the human element, all of that. I mean, get rid of the coaches poll because those are just, sports information. Those are SIDs just filling it out for the head coach. But we need to go back to the computers instead of this stupid shadow committee of, I don't know, lizards coming up with, the 4 best teams for TV deals. It's awful. That being said, incredibly excited for Michigan, Alabama. That's going to be a banger.
And honestly, Texas Washington, like
Texas
that's
Washington is one of the best matchups. Oh, yeah.
See,
Both
that's
are
why
so
I'm
good.
like it's like so frustrating because I'm like, I think they got it wrong, but like I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this product. Like,
Yeah.
it's always like
just
that's how
sheep.
they get you. Like that's
just-
how
That's
they.
what it is. Yeah.
They get you for the controversy to watch all the shows, and then they put up their hand again. Oh, come get the feed
Oh, it's junk
for the
food.
games.
It's not good for you, but it's what you want. Like, no one was craving Florida State, Michigan. No, Florida State wasn't even. Florida State wanted to be in the playoff. They didn't want to play Michigan. Like, okay,
Right.
Michigan was probably craving an easy Florida State clubbing.
Of course.
To
They need to
just,
win. Now they're stuck with Bama, man. Did you see
That
their
clip
reaction?
of them
to-
reacting
did
to
you-
Yeah,
Bama.
their reaction just be like, oh, like, and it wasn't like it was so loud, but not super quiet. It was like just the perfect amount
Yeah.
of like half the room being like, oh.
It's like finding out. It's like getting entered into some sort of like box a random person and you can win $1 million like drawing, and then you find out that you're boxing Mike Tyson. Like, yeah, he's not in his prime anymore, but I don't know if I'm gonna win that one.
But I know he's got a left hook, and
yeah,
like,
he might
it's still
get
in
me.
there. Yeah, for sure.
That's drawing this Bama team this year.
Yeah, no, I don't want to deal with it because there might be some magic up in there, and not only that, but Nick Saban with prep time is scary as hell.
I
so.
know. He was able to beat Georgia. Like, Georgia's really good. Like, Georgia, I still think, like, is probably the best team in the country. Like, I would still, like, if we were to, even with knowing everything last week, I'm like, Georgia's probably still the best team in the country. Like, it's, Nick Saban's just really good, and it's hard. Like, those teams are so evenly matched, but yeah, it's just like this Bama team is just they have some voodoo magic going for them right now. Like, there's no way in hell you're supposed to win that Auburn game with like a 30-yard pass, like, and the Auburn defender completely doesn't see them, and then go and just like handily beat Georgia. Like, I think the final score was relatively close, but like it just seemed like Bama was in control most of that game. Like,
They totally
yeah.
were.
Yeah.
They totally were.
I said on the last pod, Blake, if this Florida State storyline wasn't here this year, any other year, I think we'd be talking about how Georgia kind of got screwed over in the playoff. And I think, like you mentioned it, this is much more fringe, but Ohio State, I think you can make the argument too, is I'm looking at Ohio State going, why did they get left out? Obviously, again, 12 teams solves this, and that's much more. I'm not trying to pander to Ohio State fans, who are probably the only people who seriously believe that they got left out, but it is,
But
there's a lot of storylines.
They did go early in the season and go play Notre Dame. Is like that's my problem. Is like Ohio State does a good job of going out there and like trying to schedule reasonably hard opponents and like have some of those marquee matchups, which sucks when you on the other side of the coin you have Michigan. Michigan refuses to schedule anybody big.
Michigan's playing Texas next year.
Finally,
So-
like, and,
so,
and Jim Harbaugh's
like,
gonna leave probably. He's
here's-
probably gonna leave. And,
Michigan's non-conference. They have Texas next year, OU the year after, and then I believe it's Texas OU, Texas OU. So
perfect. Finally.
there you go. They figured it out. But
I'm
they
tired
also
of them coasting to like the week 9 or week 10, and then they finally go like against their like
Awful.
tough competition and
They
quotes
were just
being Penn
club
State.
people all year, and then Penn State is like their first like full pace practice, and
Yeah.
they still club them, and then they play Ohio State. That's
which they've been
entire-
prepping for the whole year.
It's just club people basically play a glorified high school team in Penn State, and then play Ohio State.
And they'll be like, oh well, hey, Maryland with Taco Bell, oh he's not
Yeah,
bad.
that's right.
You know, Maryland, hey, they're kind of spicy.
He might be getting plays
I-
from his
I was-
brother.
I was-
They might be getting help from Mike McDaniel.
I was a top 2 defense guys. Pretty
I was in the conference championship. Big Ten runners up.
hilarious.
Technically second best team in the conference behind us.
Yeah, and that also brings me to another point. Why is Michigan the 1 seed? Washington played the harder schedule, is undefeated, and like honestly has looked a little bit more impressive in my opinion. Like at least
But
early on
also,
in the season.
they were 9-point dogs like a week ago. It's hard to
Yeah,
take them from.
I
like,
know, but
everyone
they
was-
just-
Washington would have lost to Ohio State.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
but we also
probably.
said that about Oregon.
Yeah,
and we
that's
were
what I
dead
thought.
wrong.
Would have lost
I thought
it.
Oregon was gonna womp them. I thought, like, honestly,
Yeah, that is
Oregon looked like the better version of Ohio State this year, and they
That
just
was-
got
they were
they got
awful.
walloped.
Like from the
They got-
get go, that was rough. But
Turns out when you have a quarterback that can't throw more than like 5 yards, that becomes problematic in close games.
Cool. Oh,
Yeah.
let me tell you what, they're trying to do it again. Well,
They're
this is
doing
a
it
good segue into the transfer portal segment that we have to talk about. Oregon loves that. Oregon said, let's get worse Bo Nix.
oh my god, yeah. So
They're running it back.
the portal has been nuts. Like it's crazy. We say this every year that the portal's going crazy, all this, but this year it's been pretty insane. Like people are portaling easier, I feel like or
Yep.
quicker. I mean, just thinking about it, like obviously not top of the list quality wise, but Kyle McCord as a sophomore starting at Ohio State being in the portal is kind of just nuts. Like there's a laundry list. Cam Ward, the Washington State star quarterback. You got Riley Leonard out of Duke transferring. DJU once again hitting the portal. And then, of course, OU folks who we haven't had a chance to really talk about, but Dylan Gabriel, for his 80th year, trying to find a new home. It's just, it's been unreal. And of course, Florida or Texas A&M, there's just a total exodus there. Kansas State's lost 2 quarterbacks, which I really
I think it
wanna
might
talk-
not be up to 3. I think like one of their walk-ons like slipped into the portal
God.
too. I think it's like it's just Avery Johnson now that's remaining.
No, Avery
there.
Johnson's gone.
No, he isn't. You
No.
might have gotten duped, Bobby. You
Did I
might
get
have gotten
duped?
duped. I think I saw the same thing. There's been so many fake on 3, like there's been so many fake on 3 portal things that I saw one like that, and then I checked the username and I'm like, oh, thank God, because I'm like that would make no sense. Like that would
I
mean
saw, yeah, it'd be so dumb. I saw an Ollie Gordon one, and but I need to double check that. Surely not with Johnson. Like,
Yeah, I'll
he's
send
the heir
you-
apparent.
I'll send you what I saw, Bobby, and this is probably what we probably have pretty similar themes. But yeah, it looks very real. But
Jeez, what a mess.
anyways,
Go ahead, Blake.
yeah, the portal is like extra hot this year. I'm ready for COVID rules to be done. I'm tired of the extra year eligibility. I'm tired that you can get extra year of eligibility plus a medical red shirt plus all these other combos that can get you up to 7 or 8 years. Like it's getting ridiculous. Like it's not even quarterbacks. Like if it was like a Jaden Daniels or something that it's like they're an electric college quarterback, not going to make it in the pros, but like they're entertaining to watch, I'd be like, great. Like have those guys. Like I'm fine with those guys staying around forever, but it's just the most mid guys. Like Casey Thompson is in the portal right now, still trying to find a place. Tyler Shuck, who hasn't played like more than 3 games in a season, is like gonna be taking over Louisville next year. It's just I'm just sick of 7-year guys just being able to float around the sport that are average, and it just it doesn't help a team. I really don't think it helps a team. Like, I still think there's some benefit with some of these programs. Like, if you're at Ohio State, if you're at Florida State, if you're some of these big powers, like, sure, you have to have a great starter every single year because that is the expectation. But when you're looking at some of these, like, even like at Oregon, like even like a Miami, like Mississippi State, UCF, I see like a lot of these other teams, like, it's beneficial to give your young guy a year to develop when you know you're probably not going to be as good, because like you're not going to be competing for championships every single year. And so I feel like the portal has like contorted our minds that it's like, oh, you need to have a super reliable, perfect starter. But what happens when like one of those portal guys fails and you haven't given your backup any reps and they have to step in the next year and hasn't played like meaningful football? I just think we're gonna start to see the bad effects of this. I really do. Like,
Yeah, I mean, Ty's talking about junk food. I feel like transfer portal quarterbacks can kind of be that if you lean on them too much, because it doesn't allow you to move on. And, you know, some of our colleagues at Sellout Crowd were a little bit confused as to why we would why people would be excited about Gabriel moving or welcome Gabriel moving. And I think to me, it's more of a, it's time to move on to Jackson Arnold, because Gabriel, like, you don't want to keep Gabriel for 1 year to lose Jackson Arnold for the rest of his college career. That would be incredibly dumb. And someone wrote it, and I'm blanking on who it was. It might have been Eli Letterman, said that Dylan Gabriel no longer needed OU and OU no longer needed Dylan Gabriel. And I think that was a smart move to move on from that. I don't know Oregon's recruiting situation or not. I don't know if they have an heir apparent lined up for Bo Nix or not. But I mean, unless it's like a true freshman,
I think it was Ty Thompson. He's like, he was supposed to be like super super dynamic. Came in last year when Bo Nix was hurt and was just like, all right. Just all right. So I understand why they're going for Dylan Gabriel, but OU is in that class where you truly do you're competing for championships, and the way to win championships is to have a quarterback with a high ceiling that reaches that ceiling. Like, very few programs, like a Georgia and Alabama maybe, can compete without like a star quarterback. But like the other teams that are still in that championship contention, but like maybe don't have like the elite pieces on the defense, need quarterbacks with high ceilings. We know what Dylan Gabriel is. He's a good quarterback, just good. Like, I think he's not great. I think even his best moments,
better than just a guy, but he's not. He's not a Heisman guy, but he's not just a guy. He's like he's pretty good. He's really good.
But that's not good enough at OU. Like, even if you are just a pretty good quarterback, it's just not good enough because y'all are competing for championships. Y'all need that like championship like tier ceiling where it's like your guy should legitimately, like, your quarterback should be going to like the NFL type ceiling, not Dylan Gabriel, who's going to be playing let's learn some XFL buddy, like Arlington Renegade style football.
Get ready to learn Canadian, buddy.
Get ready to learn Bob
well, then
Stoops,
that's why so many of these guys are transferring, is because, you could go to the league and maybe get like a backup spot, undrafted walk-on, whatever, but it's not as much money as you're going to make going to Oregon for a year, get a couple mil, with that NIL bag, you're a soldier of fortune.
Yeah, it's almost like we've always said on here, if someone's transferring, it's for a reason, right? Like, no one is super, super, super successful where they're at in every way, and then they transfer, right? Like, people make an argument a little bit about Dylan Gabriel. I don't think it's a reasonable one. But, God, the most successful quarterback at where they were at that I can think of that transferred, obviously this is an OU homer take, but Caleb Williams has got to be the most successful guy where he was originally and then transferred. But that's also because he had a relationship with a coach that left. So it's not I don't like no one's ever transferring and they're super successful where they're at and then they're going to go elsewhere. I almost feel like the portal is hurting people who should otherwise be getting a chance to play, because you get these guys who have, DJU is still riding on just high school resume at this point. Like, I understand he was okay at Oregon State. I hope he, like, known DJU hater myself, I hope he gets the Florida State job, because I would love for him to follow up a great quarterback so that people can actually see what he's like when he's throwing incompletions to amazing receivers and leading them to like an 8-4 season. I wouldn't want that on Florida State, but then people would see who he is. But you get guys who are just coasting on old resumes or just names of previous schools they've been at. That's not Dylan Gabriel's case, but I feel like you're taking away opportunities from other people. Obviously, it's a beautiful thing if you have a guy who, it's just time for him to move. Obviously, not necessarily of the same era, but, Jalen Hurts, Bama to OU. But again, he had been sort of forced out at Bama. So it's certainly interesting. I think the dynamic will correct itself. I think we're sort of seeing a ton of stuff right now. And I think as people continue to learn, because you got to remember, a lot of these guys who are portaling right now just wasn't a thing when they were, this became a thing as they were playing. So as people go up through high school and everything else and the ecosystem develops, I think it will normalize a little bit. We'll see fewer portal entries that we see now. And I think you still got to give it some time to really, let it balance out. I think we're still too early to start throwing in rules. I've always been a big proponent of let it be the Wild West. Let people transfer whenever they want to and whenever they want to. I'm not a fan. I understand why coaches are for it, but I'm not a fan of instituting, they wanted to set certain date restrictions and everything else on it. I think it's fine how it is. We need to let it play out a little bit more.
Well, and the thing too, Ty, is since the portal has existed really to this capacity, we've never seen it in normal operation. It's always been in this COVID era. So we haven't seen it normalize out. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But I definitely do think you see a lot of guys hanging around a little bit longer because they can make more money in college than they can in the pros or Canada or XFL or wherever. So I'm with you. I think we definitely have a little bit more patience with it before we start really making more regulations, really cracking down on it, because we don't know what it looks like normal yet. Not only do we need more, you can't even say we need more time with the status quo, because we haven't seen what the status quo should be, because we're in just such a weird, unique situation, to say the least. So, Blake, TCU, are y'all looking at any portal folks right now, or are you just kind of SOL?
I'm honestly fine sitting this one out. It's one of those things, like, it's gonna be Hoover, and then we have like another good like 4-star guy, like Elite 11 prospect coming in. I'd rather just roll out that, because I'm like looking at like the tier of quarterbacks right now. I would say there's only 2 legitimate quarterbacks that would actually want on my team, because like
Gunnar
factoring Gunnar Gundy, of course.
Gunnar Gundy transferring away from his dad's team is chef's
kiss.
What is any other coach, and you'd be like, oh, he's about to leave, but Mike Gundy's not going anywhere.
Well, and not only that, but not only are you telling your dad, you're leaving his program, you're telling your dad, who hates the transfer portal, you're leaving his program. Probably the coach that despises the portal. Okay, second, the coach who despises it second most.
Yeah.
First has to be Dabo. Funniest tweet.
Prime's been going anti-portal now.
Who
as well?
Who's
Prime has been, which is hilarious.
Because I don't think anybody's coming to him. Like,
people are like, all right, I'm gonna head out. That Gucci luggage has been redirected.
But see, that's the funny situation with Colorado. I think they only have like 5 people in the portal right now, because they took so many last year and realized that they suck and couldn't play on like any other roster within like D1, that they're like, we should just stay. Like, we don't have anywhere else to go. Like, at best, we're gonna end up with nothing. Like, we have a scholarship here, so we're just gonna stay. And so now he doesn't have enough scholarships to go out and get new people in the portal, plus, like, recruit actual high school people. That's why you don't take, like, 60 people through the transfer portal when you only have a certain number of scholarships.
It was really dumb.
It was so dumb. But yeah, there's only 2 quarterbacks here that are legitimate. Like I was saying earlier with TCU, like Riley Leonard, and we already know he's going to Notre Dame. I think he's obviously been around the block, but I think he has like some intangible skills that make him like a really good college quarterback. I just think whenever you're put in the position when Mike Elko, who took Duke to new heights, I thought, over the last 2 years, like, leaves, you're probably not going to go find another one of those. So, like, I understand that you want to keep up your academics, but still compete for football, good in Notre Dame. And then the other one's Cam Ward. Like, Cam Ward's fantastic. The only reason why he's leaving is because Washington State's about to get demoted. They're not going to be really playing for anything, and he really is their entire team. Whenever they would win games, he was the one putting them on their back. That's why I think he's probably the best fit for Ohio State, where you don't really have anybody behind Kyle McCord. You don't really think Kyle McCord's the guy. But then you also have, like, unlimited money to throw at a guy for a year. Like, Cam Ward's easy. And he goes back to, like, maybe not CJ Stroud, but more Justin Fields. He's a little bit more mobile, can shift around. Kind of gives you some of the things that Ryan Day liked originally, and to just not have to deal with Kyle McCord with no Maserati Marv either, so it's it's gonna be worse than Kyle McCord. It's gonna get bad.
And apparently McCord is heading to, or thinking about heading to Nebraska. Him and Rule are talking, which is
just
yikes, man.
That's so gross. Like, he just looked like he didn't get it, which is concerning in an Ohio State offense, which, like, is so... That's the thing about Ohio State quarterbacks. Like, I know CJ Stroud's now good, but, like, the reason why they always get drafted so high is they scheme so well to get guys open that it makes them look really, like, a lot better than they probably actually are.
Well, they have a suite of 5-star receivers.
Yes! Like, you don't even have to... You just have to be, like, competent, like, somewhat competent to, like, do a read or maybe 2 to get it to a guy, and Kyle McCord couldn't do that, so you have to go. You have to go at that point.
Yeah, no. Honestly, smart move on his end. I'm surprised even, like, Nebraska's looking at him, because that big dog feels like he should be playing on Tuesdays on Maction, but I don't know.
That's about Nebraska's level at this point.
They're like, ooh, he's gritty.
I saw somewhere that somebody like pitched the idea of him going to Miami, and I was just like, "Oh dear God!" Like, that would just be just
awful.
So bad. It would just be. He's Tyler Van Dyke. He's just like, you get a new version of Tyler Van Dyke, and you, like, stay, like, I can't even call Miami average at this point, because, like, they significantly perform under the talent level they have on their squad. Like,
and look, here's the thing: is next off season, give it a couple months, you know it's gonna come. The ball not knowers, and I know we refer to each other as ball not knowers on this pod. We all know ball, really, all things considered.
There's one man
Everyone
not
on
here
tonight.
throwing
Everyone on tonight doesn't in fact know ball.
But we all know that Miami's going to be ass next year, and everybody in come August will be like, "Oh, is this the year the Hurricanes are back?"
So badly for Miami to be back.
I do
in
too.
Like every way, in like winning games, and then also just being absolute menaces, like committing crimes. It's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, they're a small private school.
I don't know.
As much as they try to be the Raiders of college football, it's just not them.
How do you fix that? I don't know if the answer is like an on-campus stadium, like Coral Gables is kind of a mess, and this is we have an entire offseason to talk about random stuff. Like,
we'll do a whole Miami.
How do you fix
do a whole Miami pod?
Can we
back to the point?
Go ahead, Ty. You're right. We need to get back to the point.
No, I want to hear what you have to say. Actually,
I was gonna say this offseason, maybe we like just randomly break out the weekend spread whenever we want to talk about some random object, like college football things, and be like, "How do you fix Miami?" I don't know. You know, that sort of.
That is true. Hostile takeover and restructuring of Miami.
Exactly.
Sell it to the Saudis.
Oh God. No. Florida State already has that set.
Yeah,
you need a different public investment fund to buy Miami. Get like Abu Dhabi in charge of Miami.
I will say, Bobby, one of the first things you mentioned when we dove into this portal subject was had to do it. I had to do it. I had to bring it up. Why would some OU fans not be upset that Dylan Gabriel is leaving? You guys already know the answer. This is proprietary Schooner Pod analysis. No one else has gathered this data. It is, in fact, verifiable data. I'm going to pose this as a question. I know you guys already know the answer because I've told you, but when is the last time that an OU quarterback lost 8 games in a 2-season span?
I don't know. Ty, when?
The last time that happened was 1969, 1970 with Jack Mildren before we adopted the wishbone. That's how long ago this was. In 1970, halfway through, I guess we adopted the wishbone. We lost one more game, but really cleaned it up from there. And then obviously Mildren was great in the later seasons, but an OU quarterback has not lost 8 games. This is why Dylan Gabriel's transferring, because I ran the numbers. I couldn't get super firm stats. It's mathematically possible that in 1930 and 31, if OU had the same starting quarterback, they lost more than 9 games in a 2-year span. But if Dylan Gabriel stayed, played this bowl game, and we lost, he would be the only verifiable OU quarterback ever to lose 9 games in a 2-year span.
Why did Cale Gundy not do that?
Because we had a bunch of stars. There was in
So
the
he kept
90s,
benching them because they were
start-
bad?
Yeah, he would start like 4 games, and then he'd get benched for 2, and then we'd lose both of those, and then he'd come back.
But
So
there it
throughout the
is.
90s, you would say, oh, it's someone in the 90s. We ran through quarterbacks so often in the 90s that
because they're
no
bozos.
quarterback actually lost 8 games in a 2-year span in the 90s as the starting quarterback. Obviously, if you say like, oh, someone played in this.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not including OU's loss to Texas last year as Gabriel did not play. That is counting the TCU game where he was the starting quarterback and played for part of it. So statistically, right, one of the worst in recent memory, the worst in my lifetime, at least statistically. So,
And I mean, like, you can go back to like some other subpar quarterbacks like Trevor Knight or
beat Alabama.
You know, yeah, did beat Alabama. Nate Hibble also beat Alabama. But like, I don't know.
Not super frequent, but strange that it happened twice.
Yeah, Hibble might have beaten them. No, White beat him the second time.
Well, that was
But-
beating Bama didn't
Well,
really mean a lot. But
Hibble also didn't start the game where he beat Alabama. That was one of the games Jason White tore his knee up. You know, one of the 2 times he tore an ACL was against Alabama. But anyways, that's beside the point. But you're right. That is a really weird factoid, and even weirder made by the fact that Jack Mildren is awesome, like kind of a Sooner legend. But I guess maybe that goes to show that Dylan Gabriel, Sooner legend, maybe. He's kind of OU's. He's OU Cincinnatus. He rolled into town when we needed him most, and he left voluntarily. I guess. I don't know. Mostly voluntarily. It was time to go. But all right, that's all we kind of have for the portal.
Very
I think.
transient fellow. Very
Little bit.
liminal career.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, let's move on to our next topic, and we're going to wrap this up with Army Navy. Yeah, that's right. We have a college football game this weekend. And look, we've had some pretty rough Army Navies in the past. This one's not great. Both teams, 5-6, I believe?
Yep.
Yes.
Both ineligible for a bowl because they're playing this game past the selection point.
That's
little
a
bit
dumb
of a-
rule. That is a dumb rule. Like, if you know one of those teams, a team has to win. A team has to win this Saturday, which would put them into bowl. Like, I understand if it's like, okay, one team's 8-4 and the other's 5-6, and 8-3, I guess, and that one won. Like, that doesn't make sense. But I don't get why you can't make the exception this year, where you know one of them will be bowl eligible. That's just me, though.
Yeah.
Especially when we had open slots. We
Yeah.
had open slots for the bowls to fill that we were bringing in teams. Granted, rightful teams, but
Yeah, just
we
say
had
the
to bring in
winner of
teams.
Army Navy gets in.
Yeah.
Like, that would actually add to the drama, too. It's like winner goes to a bowl game. Yeah, it would
Yeah.
be super easy.
This is basically a bowl game. I mean, obviously they want to play one more game, especially the ones that's going to be their last time playing. But both of these teams are not at the point where they're getting to a bowl game that is any more significant than this one in terms of the pageantry and everything else. First ever time it's being played in New England, being played up at the Pat Stadium. So that'll be interesting this year. Apparently, there has been a tremendous demand for tickets and for everything else. So it'll be interesting. Like you touched on, both of these teams, not necessarily the greatest this year. I mean, everyone has sort of this idea of Army because obviously they've been a little bit better in the past couple of years. They have fallen off. I think in recent memory, obviously go back 5-6 further, and they were a very significant team, especially that year that they almost beat OU on I forget what it was on, like obscure
pay-per-view. Yeah,
it was on pay-per-view, but everyone watched it on that guy's Periscope screen where you could see.
Yeah, it was before we were on ESPN Plus. It was like some sort of weird. I think you had to go to our website or something like that and sign up, and like no one had it, and it was just absolutely hilarious. Last year was the first time this game has ever gone into overtime, which is actually pretty insane to think about when you think about both of these offenses not being that impressive, in the fact that we're over 100 games into this series. Navy leading the series 62-54 with 7 ties. Obviously, overtime not a big thing back in the day when they were just happy with ties, but yeah, it should be an interesting game this season. This season. Both of these teams very unimpressive from the air, although they're both averaging about double what Florida State put up in their ACC championship game. And many are saying that team should have been in the playoffs. So I think both of these teams must be tremendous through the air if they're putting up double the numbers of an alleged playoff team.
They should just throw the winner of this in the CFP. Just kick out Alabama and put in Navy. That's
the 12th bid.
Yeah.
The 12th bid in the 12 team playoff. All the Power 5 champs get in automatically. The winner of Army Navy gets in just to see what will happen. And then I like to think Boca would get an auto bid, but
they should. They should, honestly, but also they didn't win the Sun Belt. But
that's
hypothetically,
another off-season pod idea is we describe our ideal auto bids for the 12-team.
Out of respect for Army Navy, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of Boco fans being excited on Twitter about boulevarding before the Serve Pro versus Wonders Bowl.
No,
they're not that. Anyways, we're not, again, out of respect, not going to go down that rabbit hole. But no, this is, I honestly, in a weird way, even though the records are kind of gross, I think the fact that these two teams are evenly matched is really exciting. I feel like growing up, Navy was always a way superior team to Army every single year. Mm-hmm. So to have this be like a pretty evenly matched, solid game, I'm excited for it because, we talk all the time about rivalry games where you throw the record out, blah, 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 blah. But this one, you really do throw it out. Like, you just watch the game, enjoy the spectacle, and the rest of college football, the rest of the sports world just kind of melts away.
Yeah, Army won. They've won 5 of the last 7, but like you touched on, pretty much the entirety of the 2000s, Navy has been dominant. I mean, I think we went on, was it 15 game? I'm a terrible fan for not knowing, but I think it was 15 years in a row of just straight wins over Army, which was very, very significant.
Of course, and we being Army in that sense, Ty. For viewers who might not know, why do you support Navy?
I've always supported the midshipmen. I've always supported Navy, and then obviously having been in the Marine Corps, we draw a significant number of our officers from the Naval Academy, and then obviously fall under the umbrella of the Department of the Navy. So you'll see some Marine Corps activities, some vehicles and personnel and everything else out in attendance for the game, and it's very much a joint effort on behalf of what would be referred to as the greater naval service between the Navy and the Marine Corps. You'll see Marine Corps assets doing flyovers for games traditionally, and then you see on the pants, obviously, Navy always wears the Eagle Globe and Anchor on their left hip there. Actually, this is a good segue into the uniforms because that's always a big one. Sorry if you're listening on podcast. Bobby's got them up here on for our video watchers, not video listeners, because you can
50
listen to the video.
5202 or sorry 5402. Go to that on YouTube and you can see them visually. So
Yeah, that's a good tip. Or just Google Army Navy uniforms.
that's true. You can do that.
Actually,
too.
give us the views. Give us the views.
Give us. Yeah. Wait. Sorry. No. Give us the views. Give us the
Oh no,
views.
I'm a terrible promoter. So we'll go left to right here. So Army's uniforms, you see there in the tan or the cream. He's wearing a number 3. They are honoring the Army's 3rd Infantry Division, a division known sort of they're known for. They had a commander who was very big on what he called out deciding the enemy, which I think is just a really cool analogy to bring to football. Really, any sort of human endeavor is being able to make correct decisions or just decisions in general. Well, obviously, correct decisions at a rate that just outpaces your opponent. Obviously, you're going to, if you're a quarterback and you can make, correct decisions outpacing what the defense can make, then you're going to make those completions. And then the other big thing that the 3rd Infantry Division is known for is the Thunder Run was their tactic in recent memory. And, that couldn't be more fitting for these teams that are both super, super run heavy, both in the top 25 in rushing, funny enough, because that's all they do. I think both teams are pretty evenly matched. I want to say Army is 20th, Navy is 22nd. Might be completely wrong on that. I'm not looking down at my notes right now, but so Army wearing that sort of desert cream with a little V stripe under the numbers, it invokes, I guess, the motif of some of the markings that are on Army tanks. Same with the coloration. So that's what Army's going for in this one, and I think it is a beautiful uniform matchup pairing with Navy, who has gone with Navy with Under Armour uniforms. Interestingly enough, there's always a Nike versus Under Armour matchup in this game as well. Navy going with the deepest blue that Under Armour had in their lineup, apparently, honoring the silent service, the submarines. So Navy is a big fan of airbrushed helmets. They've got some airbrushed helmets with a sort of deep ocean blue water sort of waves on them, and then a Virginia class fast attack submarine painted on the sides, and then just an overall deep blue uniform with a bold white lettering that sort of invokes some of the numbering on the older Navy submarines with that crisp white on the deep blue, meant to invoke the submarines. So
That's so sick. I gotta love. I honestly kind of love the sub uniforms a little bit better than the Army ones.
mm-hmm.
The Army ones are sick. I always love the gold, the kind of tan look they have going. I think on a different podcast, I actually said I preferred the Army ones, but making these graphics and everything, it's pretty sick.
Pandering Bobby as usual.
Pandering Bob, but look, I after spending more time with them, editing these graphics and seeing what got me was the guy hopping out of the submarine. That made it even cooler.
Yeah, I will say if you go watch the release trailers for these, I think Navy had a much higher production value, and they went much farther into just making a good advertisement. I think if you watch them, not that the Naval Academy couldn't have produced it, but I think you go and watch the reveal trailers for each of these uniforms, and you can tell that West Point made the trailer for Army because it's very much like a old school History Channel sort of infomercial where they're showing the uniform, but the guy's at like an Army base, maybe in Arizona. It looked a lot like my backyard here. And he's just kind of walking around in the sand while someone reads off like historical notes. And then I think Under Armour made the Navy one. It seems like a legitimate, really cool commercial. But yeah, I got to say, you're looking at them from a merchandise angle. Obviously, they always sell really well to people who are fans of sort of one thing or another. But these are very much uniforms. I think the jerseys are kind of simple on their own, but they very much come together into some really sharp things that I will look like a very, very cool matchup on TV as well. Because sometimes when you get these really neat, one-off uniforms, Navy's been guilty in the past, maybe over airbrushing the helmets. You can't really tell what's going on, or you just get some weird matchups. But this should be very pleasing to the eyes with a sort of cream yellowish color and then a deep blue.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like sometimes, the color and color can be too much. I'm with you, but they complement each other perfectly. It's that, and it symbolizes, kind of in a very simple, dumb way, land versus sea. Like it's kind of neat. It makes sense a little bit there.
I've not thought about that, and I haven't heard anyone say that, but
Yeah.
that is actually really hilarious that someone has simplified it that much.
Yeah, it's the good old Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire battle, ground versus water, I guess. I don't know. Blake, what are your thoughts on uniforms? Who do you like? Who do you give the edge to in the uni battle?
I think it's always Navy for me because I love the airbrushed helmets. I know they can get a little bit wild, a little bit out there, but I love the ones where they do like the different ships or planes, and they do like different ones depending on like your position group and stuff like that. I just feel like Navy, and this is like weird because I feel like Under Armour always goes like very simple with a lot of their uniforms, but they seem to get the Navy partnership correct with this. That gives them something that like I love that both of these jerseys really don't try too hard to be doing too much with like graphics and other things. However, like I do think like the small subtle touches, like the Navy's helmet and stuff, like really wraps it together. Like if you take off the helmet, it's a really like pretty color blue in a white jersey, which like for the podcast listeners like probably seems very basic, but it just looks significantly more beautiful than it sounds. So I love the Navy ones, but I think this is like, it's great. It's gonna look like a sandy beach out there. It's going to be the water running up the shores, and then the tide going out to sea whenever whatever army has the ball. So I think it's gonna look magical. So, but I get the edge. Navy, those helmets, right? That deep color of blue. Like I want one of those jerseys just because I'm admiring that color of blue and how just perfect it looks.
Yeah, Ty, for the podcast or YouTube viewers, we always see you rocking Navy stuff all the time. Is this a candidate, a jersey candidate for you, like to maybe add to your collection?
No, I wouldn't say I'm always on the lookout for the Navy jerseys when they go on sale. I'm wearing my sort of this one with the from a couple years ago. It's a shame I don't remember the year, but the Don't Give Up the Ships with the deep blue granite on the shoulders. It's not water. It's from a chapel that's on the campus. But I think next up in my queue will probably be the NASA ones. I had a talking point on this as well. Both of these schools had to mention it. Unlike Central Florida, both of these schools, much like OU, have produced astronauts that have been to the moon. Central Florida, hasn't even produced astronauts. So both of these schools very much own space. Navy more so than Army, but both of these schools verified space schools. So I think Navy, maybe the NASA ones. A couple years ago, I was a big fan of the Flying Navy ones as well for naval aviation. They were similar, but they had some red in them, and they had some cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, these are always really great. Army really knocks it out of the park a lot of the years as well. But, so we've sort of decided on our picks for the uniform matchup. I know we weren't necessarily super firmly planning on it, but this is the weekend spread. And we do have a 3-point line in this one, which I think is pretty fair. Army coming off of, obviously both teams are 5-6 right now. Army maybe has a little bit more of an impressive resume. Army is on a 3-game hot streak, but with a win over ranked Air Force. Air Force was a pretty respectable team this season. And then a win over Coastal Carolina. Obviously, Coastal, not who they once were. And then Army's other wins being Holy Cross, UTSA, and Delaware State. Not very impressive at all, but you go over to Navy, and most impressive win, maybe North Texas would be the best team that they've beaten this year. Other teams being East Carolina, UAB, and Charlotte and Wagner, who is D3 or something like that, I think. So, not super impressive resumes. I think Navy has the most quality loss in their loss to Notre Dame. So that's an important thing to remember. If you're the college football playoff committee, you could in fact look at that quality loss where they lost, I think it was 42-6 to Notre Dame, and that could give them the edge.
Did you delete the quality loss mention banner? Because I was
No, it's
ready to fire it off.
It's under a weird.
It's too late.
It's under
now. It's too
weekend
late
spread.
now.
There it is. Quality
there
loss
we go.
mention.
Quality loss mention. It was
there's two quality loss banners. There's also
I love there's a
Pac-12
Pac-12
quality loss
quality
question
loss.
mark. That one's not.
That
Unfortunately, no
That
longer
one you'll have to
useful.
retire.
the Navy
Or-
does look.
Or
hey, look,
actually, Oregon State and Wazoo owns the IP to that now, so
The
we
two
might
Yeah,
get
but
sued
there's
if
no
we
way
use
you
that.
get a quality loss out of those two teams. That's the thing.
that's funny.
No, but I think
Um,
we should. I think we should do
Yeah.
some.
Yeah,
big
we
games.
gotta pick the game. Yeah, for sure. Look, I think these two teams are pretty evenly matched, but when I've been thinking about this game, I keep going back to what Army's done. The record isn't impressive, yeah, I know, but they have some big time wins. That Air Force team was very big, very good. We were very impressed with them on the weekend spread many a time this season. UTSA, very great program as well. I'm trending Army, and I'm going to go with Army here. Usually in an evenly matched game like this, I just take the points, but I think the Knights really kind of have this. They have a better team. They've won big games in tough situations. Obviously, nothing tougher than, your rival with Navy. This game is massive. It's bigger. It's as big as a college football game can get. So to me, I think Army finds a way to dig their way out of this tough battle. I mean, definitely going with the under on this one. But I'm gonna go with Army. They've pulled it out. So Army gets the win and the Commander-in-Chief's trophy here is my pick.
Important note. As we get into this on picks, it is a 3-point line, like Bobby mentioned. Army -3. Both of these teams have kickers whose long is 45, but whose realistic range is much shorter than that. So Navy's
sloppy.
Navy's kicker, I think, is about he's 62.5%. They've only had 8 attempts all year. He's made 5. Army has attempted much more, which I think bodes well for that 3-point cover for them. Their leading kicker sitting at just under 85%, 11 made
good.
on 13 attempts. So
Okay.
their realistic range though is I think their average is in the 20 to 35 yard range
Oh
for
boy.
both of them. So this is one where it is kind of rough when you start to get into analyzing like the scoregami of it. If you're not familiar with the term scoregami, is sort of the outcome of the scores. I'm not sure how I shortly
Yeah, it's
summarize
unique
score-
scores.
scoregami.
It-
Well, there's
Score-
unique
and scoregami. Yeah, scoregami is really rare in college football. It's like the first time that score has ever been recorded in college football.
Oh, well, I use
Yeah, but-
scoregami sort of as the science of how mathematically scores would work out. If that makes
So
sense.
math.
So that's quick
Well,
maths.
yeah, but that's
Quick
that's all
maths.
scoregami is too.
Pretty much. OU had a scoregami this year, actually. I think against West Virginia, which is pretty wild. But Blake, what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, this one's gonna be interesting to me. I know we talked about Navy back in week 0, feels like light years away, but
Oh my God,
Navy
wow.
definitely started to implement the pass a little bit more. Like, this doesn't sound like a lot, but I feel like this is a lot in Navy standards. Crunch the numbers with all the different quarterbacks that they played. They're passing about like 16, 17 times a game, which is like fairly substantial. Like, I know Army has tried to take a little bit of that jump to passing it, but they're still only hovering around like 10, 11 mark. It seems like Navy's willing to commit to that. So I'm really excited to see just how the future of like what Navy's trying to get at to like kind of modernize their offense a little bit? Like, what does that bode for this type of game? Is it one of those things? It's like you want to modernize, but then you realize it doesn't work, so you go you go back to the old scheme like very quickly, and you're like, yeah, we're not passing it a single time. Like, is it one of those things that you're just so familiar in this game that you're not chucking the rock around, that it's just like stick to the basics, keep it close? Like, it seems like these games always come down to like a final drive, extra like they always seem relatively close. It's just, or it's probably hard to blow out teams when you're running the triple option. Like, you kind of like you methodically move the ball, and so I'm going to take Navy with the points. I just feel like I'm interested to see how the pass attack works. Worries me a little bit what Ty's saying about the kickers. I just need to see what the 45-yarders look like from these two guys. I just imagine it's just like winds behind them, like hits the bottom of the crossbar and it just rolls over.
Downhill.
Like, they barely got it. And they're just like, oh, thank God. Like,
in Denver.
In Denver,
maybe,
yeah.
Probably at
Air Force. Yep, at Air Force. They need every little bit, but I'm for sure taking the under. I just feel like this is one of those games, the under can't be too low. It just, every year these teams will like put up new offensive records for like what the triple option can do. They look unstoppable, or like even just one of the schools. Like, I think even like when you put like an Air Force or something, I fell victim to that this year. I'm like, Air Force is so good. Like, these games have to go over. No, they still find a ways when they play the other service academies to find
they know how to stop
slow
that.
it to a crawl. Yeah, it's just like they
know the offense.
Yeah, they know the offense, and so there is no total too low that I'm willing to take, so I'm just going to take the under. There's
the
nothing
over
worse.
Finally hit last year? I feel like I remember the over hitting last year.
I
I
think it might have been 2 years ago.
I remember it being a big deal because everyone was like, it's been 23 years since the over hit, and then it finally hit.
Yeah, it's so funny for just all the advanced analytics and like people that actually try to like project spreads and stuff like that. Like, the total they have for this game is so significantly higher than what Vegas like projects. Like, Vegas like artificially lowers the total, and it like still goes under every single time. Like, they have pumped the number so far down, and they still can't find the sweet spot of like getting it to the point where it can make it a competitive spread.
Oh yeah, last year
Overtime.
it ended a 16-year run for the under.
Was it because of overtime?
It's because of overtime.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's because of overtime.
Because of overtime. Of course. Yeah, last year the total was 32 and a half.
Was it single or double overtime?
I think it was just single.
Single.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 20
Okay.
to 17.
This year it's 27 and a half.
27 and a half, yeah, this year.
Very, very Iowa-ish. Ty, I feel like I know who you're going with.
Yeah.
But it's your turn. We're rolling out the red carpet for you. Who you pick?
End of last season, Navy parted ways with long time coach Ken Niumatalolo. Blake kind of touched on it. I think there was a desire at Navy to move forward. Being the head coach at either of these schools is a big deal. There's a greater expectations beyond sort of just winning games. There's a player development. There's a certain personality. They want a certain type of person there. They want them to be there for a long time. And Ken Niumatalolo did a really good job of that, of developing good midshipmen that were able to, go on to the naval service and do great things, and also win a good number of games, have a very, very good record against Army. But it was just kind of time to move on. So Navy hired new head coach as of this year, Brian Newberry. Obviously, bit of a rough start to the year, but he's in it for the long run. And I think, like Blake said, there is a pretty tremendous effort to implement a newer or more modern, or at least more novel style of offense or of football in general, to move on from that just sort of option heavy, service academies have one gimmick. Obviously, it's still very run heavy. Obviously, it's a lot of the same in sort of day to day, nothing changes, but in time, things will be very different, I think. is the strategy, and it's something that they're sort of following Air Force in. Air Force pioneered moving to a more novel system. And obviously, we've seen great things from Air Force in recent years. They were ranked much of this year, even though they lost to Army. Army obviously still headed up by head coach Jeff Monken. He's done a tremendous job there. But facing hard times right now, and Service Academy football is hard, especially with the recruiting landscape right now. And the Service Academy is not exactly able to take advantage of the portal and of NIL. So
although Ty, I believe you once had the take that technically the U.S. government first NIL payers.
They weren't on NIL, but they've always been salaried. They're always
from a certain point of view
on a military pay scale. So even going back to, I mean, that's why they won all the championships back in like the 40s and stuff, because they were able to actually just salary their people. But yeah, I will be, of course, riding with my mids +3 in this one. I like them outright. I think this game is essentially a pick 'em every year. When it comes to the line, it's such a throw the record books out. And then again, the teams are just so similar in so many ways that this one, I think, really is a throw the record books out. And you very rarely see this one run away. Like, this is one of those where, anything can happen in college football. Obviously, you're probably not going to see a tremendous like Hail Mary or pick six or something, but anything can happen. And when you're talking about a game that's most often a one-score game, it really is a watch the whole thing. Obviously, it's going to be a slower brand of college football. I feel like, God, I want the over to happen so bad. I want both of these teams have pretty respectable defenses. Honestly, talk about, who have they played? But, I mean, Army played LSU. They didn't do that great. Navy obviously played Notre Dame. But statistically, both of these teams are in the top 25 and a couple figures on defense, on, I think, stopping third downs, and different things like that. Obviously, number of first downs against you is something that time of possession greatly helps, but I wish it would hit the over, but I'm going to have to ride with Navy and the under on this one.
All right. Well, it looks like I'm an island boy here, which is a horrible place to be when you're.
We didn't get a pick for Jameson, but
yeah, well.
There is some comedy to being an island boy surrounded by Navy.
I know, not definitely a little ironic there, to say the least. But yeah, no, I'm excited for what should be a really good, really exciting game. Just truly a really excellent bit of Americana, an important, not just an important game for college football, but an important game for the country, and just it's awesome. And Ty, always really appreciate talking about this every single year with you. The amount of passion you have for Navy and this game and all of this, it's clearly evident, and it's always. I just want to thank you for sharing it with both us and our audience. It's always a really good time.
I think that's why we do this. It's passion for the game,
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. This one's going to look interesting next year. Both of these teams going to be in the American. Technically, won't be an American game, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so Army making a big jump to, I guess the American next year. That'll be interesting. But look, that's all we have for the weekend spread part. We had a bit of breaking news kind of happen over the course of this podcast. Danny Stutzman going to the NFL draft. So something a little bit surprising for OU there. Some moves in the portal. A pretty solid Michigan State offensive tackle, moving to OU. We're not going to break that down now. It's 1-17 in our kind of gap weekend spread week. So we're not going to dive into that, but you best believe me and Ty will have those takes for you on Sunday for the Schooner Pod. And Jameson too, if he decides to show up and, accept his criticism for being a ball not knower. But anyways, guys, really appreciated this entire show. Always a blast. Blake, final thoughts. Your first Army Navy pod. What did you think?
No, I enjoyed it. I thought this was perfect. Like, honestly, this is going to be probably now a nice little yearly tradition with how crazy things the transfer portal goes, the 12-team playoff, all that. Just have a nice, like, this one was so, maybe it's because a certain guy is not here on the podcast, but so relaxing. Like, I feel so at peace right now that, like, I just came on, we talked some ball, wasn't too much yelling, wasn't too much, like, hijinks or anything like that. It was kind of nice. It was a nice change of pace that I could just get on the highway and cruise this time and not have to like street race against somebody on this pod. So
I love how anytime one of us misses a pod, we immediately just rail against him. Because I've definitely been on airplanes listening to the Scooter Pod and hearing Jameson being like, it's good Bobby's not here. This is our best one yet. And I'm like, so I'm glad. I'm able to sit here and mess with him because I know it's not talking behind someone's back if they're going to listen to it later on the show. So,
known yapper, Jameson.
Jameson, if anyone had a bad take, he'd be like, I don't know about that. Or just think, oh, come on. Like, he'd be hopping in, interjecting. No, this is just a nice, peaceful pod, and I do appreciate that. It was nice.
He seems tense in the chat right now. I sent that Avery Johnson link, or not that, in our group chat, yeah. And he seemed pissed that I sent that Avery Johnson thing. Like, literally just showing Bobby, like, is this the same thing? And, like, Jameson got to, just like Bobby and I at one point, and he was like, I'm sick of this! I've had enough of this! Like, and I'm like, dude, I'm sending for context. Like, whoa, take it easy. So, probably good that he got his night off, got to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
We were able to have a
he didn't have a night off. He's currently working the ER, I think, right now.
Oh, maybe not night off. Maybe morning, or he got his morning off this morning.
His leisure time is listening to us blabber for an hour and a half.
He's gonna be so mad on his commute home at like 4 a.m. and we're just railing him at the end of this podcast.
Fake transfer portal news for K-State's like third string quarterback. It's like, I'm sick of this.
I'm done. Oh goodness. Well, look, great show, everyone. Really looking forward to the ball pods. There's no way those won't be madness. And look, if y'all have been listening to us this entire season, listen to our picks and be like, these bozos, they're ball not knowers. I know more ball than them. This is your time to prove it, because right now we have a bowl mania where you can pick the bowls against the spread against us and win real money. So we'll have a prize. We're still trying to set the amount, but it will be substantial. It'll be solid. And the entry fee is free, $3.99. So just in the description, both of the podcast and YouTube, we'll put the link there. Sign up there. And look, here's the only caveat: you have to listen to the podcast to get the password, which is Milady, M-Lady, all lowercase. So yeah, that's the only thing. So there you go. Make sure to come back, hit that link. And that's how we know. That's how we know. One, you're a ball knower, and two, you're actually a Schooner Pod listener. So, again, that's password MLady, all lowercase. So, that's how you join Ballmania and can compete against us for real money. So, anyways, that's all the plug-in I have to do. But for me, Ty, and Boat and Blake, this has been the Weekend Spread. Thank y'all so much for listening. And good luck out there. Ty, beat Army.